All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Leasing and Property Management Committee Luncheon Virtual Meeting. We have the Honorable Josh Herrera from Precinct 3, correct? Or is it Precinct 2? 3, right?
3, yes, sir.
Precinct 3 with us. We're glad to have him here. He's been a great help with us over the couple of years that he's been a Justice of the Peace here with us. And he's going to share some experiences and information with us today about evictions, what's happening in today's world with COVID, and also, like, for example, if all the Justice of the Peace offices are open, give us some ideas. But I'd like to welcome Josh Herrera. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me and for always being a good friend and giving me the opportunity to address you guys, especially with evictions and the changing of evictions and the changing of laws. The ability to get out and speak to as many folks as possible to make them aware of constant changes is a huge benefit, because it makes obviously you better practitioners for the court. And it can make the courts more efficient as well. So the more people know about this, the better. Thank you again. So some things that I wanted to touch on are going to be kind of where the laws are, where the deadlines of laws, where they currently are, some of the programs that are currently set up to prevent evictions if possible, and the moratorium that's going on. So first and foremost, December, there is an emergency order that's been put out by the Supreme Court. That emergency order is extended until December 1st. I don't know what the Supreme Court is going to do after December 1st. I can only imagine, like everything else, it's going to be extended. Okay, this deadline. And what this deadline says is that we are not currently bound by any deadlines. Okay, so statutes of limitation, this goes all across the board, across civil and criminal cases, but definitely as it relates to evictions. Typically, evictions are heard within 21 days from the filing of the case, but with that in place, we're allowed to extend it. So what you'll have right now, and it's very tough to say which court is doing what, because you have eight justices of the peace and everybody operates a little bit differently. So you'll see sometimes a gap in when your case is going to be heard. For example, my court, we were hearing stuff every week. We had a certain select day that was set up, and recently, and then we halted a bit, and we started having court regularly. But with the recent spike in cases, what I did in my court was I reduced it to once a month. Okay, so we actually have cases coming up on this tomorrow, and then we probably won't hear any cases until December 1st, and that's just the December 1st, and that's in lieu of the rising of cases, the rate of infection and the deaths that's going on in the county. There's not as previously, the JPs did have orders that were consistent all across the board. We don't have anything like that right now. Any emergency orders that have been put out by the county or by the city, there's been nothing to address evictions. Okay, so right now there's currently nothing to that effect. There is a moratorium on evictions, and the moratorium states that certain people, and I don't think I spoke with you folks beforehand, certain people can be exempt from an eviction. Okay, and I'm going to go over some stuff right now, and what I can tell you, it could be a lot of information. I'm going to give you, before we head out of here, I'm going to give you our email address so that you can contact our office and we can make sure that you have the up-to-date forms. Whenever you're filing in an eviction case, especially right now, you do want to be current with any forms that you file, because it can prolong your case. Okay, so the petition, I'm going to share my screen. Let me get us here. I hope you're seeing the internet page that I have right here. And here is a petition for eviction. This here is at the Justice of the Peace Precinct 3 website. Okay, this is our website. I do my best to keep our website up to date, as current as possible. Every JP is responsible for their own page. It's been tough to get our IT department for the county just kind of put a widespread thing out. So this information should be on the main JP page for El Paso County, but it is here for the precinct 3. Okay, you'll have the petition there. Okay, so you want to include the petition because this is different information than what was previously under which you could previously file. Okay, so going back to the moratorium on the eviction, the moratorium states that you cannot go forward on an eviction if it is for unpaid rent only and you have received a declaration, a valid declaration of a qualified person, and I'll go into who's a qualified person pursuant to the moratorium. Okay. Now, if there's other lease violations, you can always go forward on other lease violations. Okay. So it also, if you're what we're called the CARES Act, CARES Act is what I'm using, the language that I'm using to identify CARES Act is if you received any federal, if it's a federally backed mortgage, or you're receiving any county vouchers or any federal vouchers for your property, that under that, you cannot have an eviction unless it's for, if it's for non-payment of rent. Okay. And here you'll see here a couple things I want to go over for sure. I hereby incorporate by reference the attached verification of compliance with sections 402, 4024 of the CARES Act. Okay, those forms can be found. I'm gonna have to, if I get out of this, it's also on the JP page. It is underneath here, and I'll show you where you can get that. Those forms must be filed along with your petition. If you fail to file those forms, if you get up to a hearing, chances are it's going to be pushed back. My staff, what we're doing is we're trying to catch these problems beforehand and give property owners the opportunity to file that. Okay. So here, and I'm going to go, I don't know what's going on here. I can't get out of this page. Okay. So verification. Let me go into here. Some of these things about this is about the CARES Act compliance. Okay. This was updated, I want to say at the beginning of last month. You have to state whether or not this is a covered property. Okay. That multifamily borrower, that you, and this is if you're a CARES Act, if you're receiving those federally funded, if it's federally funded at all your property, or you're getting any kind of money for your property from the government, you have to include this information here. This is critical. This right here, E, I certify that the plaintiff has, and if the property owner would be the plaintiff, has or has not received a CDC sworn declaration. Now, the sworn declaration is on the JP website as well. It's on our website, and the ones I can go off the top of my head is people that qualify. If you're a covered person, you see right here, it says covered person in quotation marks. Covered person is going to be somebody who makes less than $99,000 a year. I want to say it's $198,000 if you're filing, if you file jointly. If you have been hospitalized, or you have hospital bills incurred right now because of COVID, if you lost your job recently as a result of COVID, it's been my experience, most people do qualify for something like this, at least that I've seen in my court. Additionally, it states that the person, the tenant, has exhausted every resource available to them, any government resource available to them in regards to receiving assistance for rent. Okay, that's very, very important. You know, people have to go out there, and there's different ones available, and I'll tell you about one right now that is currently available to receive government funds for rental assistance. Okay. Now, what landlords should know, landlords, if they're not receiving these right now, I would imagine that they are, what the tenant has to give them to the landlord. They can give them to the court. We do encourage them to bring them to the court, but they must give them to the landlord. So if somebody were to come into my court and they said, well, I just gave it to you, I didn't give it to the landlord, I would consider that not received. Okay. And I would probably postpone it to give them an opportunity to give it to the landlord. Before this document, this declaration that I mentioned was only available online, or somebody walked into our office. Now, when somebody receives a petition for eviction, a citation, they are given this form along with it. Okay. Unfortunately, I think some folks have signed it and given it to the landlord without really seeing exactly what it entails. And the reason I would say that is because I've had people come and they come to their court hearing, they say they filed it, and then a landlord does have an opportunity to dispute. Okay. You have an opportunity to dispute that declaration. Okay. And you'll see here, so the declaration is right here. Okay, we have it here. I don't think it's necessary to go into it. But here, plaintiff's contest. Remember, the landlord is the plaintiff. They go there, and here you're contesting some of the contents of that. Okay, so just because you file the tenant files a declaration doesn't mean that they're covered. Okay, if a landlord does contest it with that and at any point with the court, then you can have a hearing to determine whether or not that form is valid, the contents is valid. For example, I've had cases where somebody said, I did seek out government assistance. And I said, and this was after we'd already postponed the hearing. And I said, when did you seek out your government assistance? He's like, well, it was the last time that we were in court. But the last time we were in court was after they filed that document with the landlord. So I said, well, so by the time you filed this with the landlord, you hadn't really looked into anything. So based on that, we found the form to be invalid. Okay. Additionally, I had a tenant that just, admitted that they haven't really sought out any assistance, or they said that they were, I think his words were, I was irresponsible with the money that I could pay rent with. Okay, because in that declaration, it says they have to make good faith efforts to pay. Okay, so based on those, we found that, that was an invalid declaration, and we went through with the eviction. Okay, if the eviction is granted, then if the eviction is granted, it would operate like any other eviction. If we come into scenarios where you have a tenant, a writ of possession, that's after the landlord's waited 5 days, the tenant is still in the property, and they want to go to the court to ask for the constable's assistance to remove the tenant from the property. Sometimes I think it's once or twice, maybe we've come into a situation where you'll have the tenant say that they are covered by COVID, or they have COVID right now, they could suspect COVID. So, we err on the side of caution, and we wait a bit of time. We just stay in constant contact. That's not very often. That happens like very rare, but that is something that does happen. Okay. If the declaration is found to be valid, what happens is, and then remember, this is only for non-payment of rent. If the declaration is found to be valid, they are allowed, at least per the CDC moratorium right now. And if you want to, you can read it there. It's there, the CDC moratorium on evictions, the language is there. Then they can stay there until December 31st. That's the date for right now. Now they are still occurring during this time, any rent. It doesn't mean that they're not required to pay rent. At the end of December 31st, they have to pay rent. Okay. So that's the moratorium on eviction. That's some of the key stuff that we're looking at. As soon as I get a petition for eviction, we want to make sure we have the petition. We want to make sure that we have the verification of compliance with the sections 4023 and 24. Go through it and just submit these forms. Oftentimes, if somebody has an attorney, attorneys will prepare their own forms, okay, for eviction. And they're old forms that probably existed pre-COVID, and they are missing this language. So what we've told attorneys is just go to the website. This is the information that you need. Don't come up with a fancy one. This is this is going to hit all the bullet points. Additionally, pro se litigants who don't come in with attorneys, who have been property owners for long times, they file forms that they are used to. We just direct them and say that form is no longer good, and we've had to reschedule cases because of that. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the petition because, and this is going to segue into my second point. The first point was a moratorium. The second point is rental assistance programs. Okay. So the justices of the peace or the courts don't, just by giving a shout out to this program, we don't get any funds. We don't get any funds from the city or anybody if we bring up these resources. Okay, so I just want to start out with that caveat. I did it one time. We were having a hearing. All the hearings continue to be by Zoom, at least by my court. Contact the courts to see if they're in person or out of person. Right now, I think everybody should be on Zoom. But I did a Google search, and there's one that's called it's a eprenthealth.org, O-R-G. And I think that one is through the city. And it was my understanding that, then this is just what I gather from going in the newspaper and reading up on stuff as articles come out, or in the news channels. There's millions of dollars that are available to renters, to tenants, to landlords. Landlords in the eprenthealth.com .org can petition for those funds. So it's not just the tenant that asks for the funds, but the landlord can also petition for those funds. Okay. And there's millions of dollars of these federal funds available, these grants. Okay. If we don't get, it's my understanding that if we don't use that money, then we don't, then it just goes away at the end of that time. Okay. So that's something to keep in mind, eprenthealth.org. Additionally, this is something that the Supreme Court came up with recently. It's called the Texas Eviction Diversion Program. The Texas Eviction Diversion Program is something that the state of Texas is trying to implement. The reason I say trying to implement is because we are a pilot county for that program. I want to say there's 7 counties that are involved in it right now. They were going to start, I think, November 12th, or it could have actually been I think they were going to start November 12th, but there was a pushback on that. So El Paso is still covered under that, the pilot program. So a landlord filing a petition, you are saying that you affirm that you reviewed the information in this website. Okay. And I'm just going to go over some of the points of that website, what's contained therein. And the intention of the program. I'm not going to go into the website. The eviction diversion program is intended to prevent, in cases for non-payment of rent, always non-cases of non-payment of rent, it's attempting to avoid evictions if possible. Okay. It's a mediation program. What happens is that if First and foremost, both parties, the tenant and the landlord, must agree to enter into this program. If a landlord says this, and the way I handle my court is I say, first, have both parties looked into this, because both parties are required to look into it. And I'll ask the landlord, are you interested in going into this program? If the landlord says no, then, by virtue of not having consent of both parties, then I don't go into the explanation of the program. We do start off with an explanation of the program, but I stop asking the questions about it, whether or not they want to go into it. If both parties say yes, what happens is the case is abated for 60 days. So we hold off on that case for 60 days. Okay. And they come back at the end of the 60 days. It is our contact for organizing that is Project Bravo. Okay, Project Bravo is the one that they do the intake of information. They coordinate what is essentially a mediation between the parties, and you would get funds. They would help you get the funds to the landlord. Okay. They told me that it is you do have to fill out some paperwork. It's not just, you don't just sign up for it and they start giving you the rental monies, but You sign up for the program. You have to have a bank account. They would deposit any funds into the bank account. I would imagine that's got to be the same thing for the eprenthelp.org or any other programs. And I think they can pay forward rent they can go like 3 months is what they can do. Okay. So that is another option. I don't know about Paso County. I think we had about $600,000 at one point. It was $500,000, but one pilot county opted out. So their funds are redistributed to the remaining counties that are part of the pilot program. And we got a little bit more money. It's my understanding that there's going to be even more money deposited into the accounts. Okay. That will abate the case. Okay. And this is separate. This is 60 days. So this is separate from the CDC moratorium. CDC moratorium as of right now expires on December 31st. This one would be abated for 60 days. Okay. And as far as we're concerned, this can extend past December 31st. If parties agree to it in my court tomorrow, it would extend past December 31st. So, you know, as far as evictions, and I know that we talked about the courts, how the courts are operating. You do want to contact every court. We're located in the courthouse. We're on the 3rd floor of the courthouse. The courthouse is not letting anybody in as of right now. I believe that's under the county judge's restrictions. However, in certain emergency scenarios, just because the way that the JP courts work, people have to come into the JP courts. So we will make an exception if we have to receive somebody. You can still file cases. You can e-file cases. You can communicate with us via email. Our email is listed right here. That's my so even if you're going to another JP, that's fine. If you have questions regarding evictions without giving advice, we can answer informational questions. That's us, jp3office@epcounty.com, and we can do our best to help you out, at least in telling you where the forms are. But like I said, the forms that you're going to need are going to be right here. If you file for a petition for eviction, I think it's safe to call the courts or contact the court, whether it be by email, whether it be by phone, because I can't tell you which courts are open and which ones aren't. That fluctuates, I'm sure like the way that your offices do. If you have a COVID scare, you kind of shut down for a little while. But they'll talk with you by email or communicate with you by email if necessary. But you want to make sure that you have the correct forms, because like I said, that can postpone a case. Okay. I don't know. I can't tell you the frequency. I think everybody was on prior to COVID, and maybe when we got a little bit more comfortable with this, with working virtually and working from home, we were having evictions once a week. That could be slowed down, just because I'm telling you right now, it is in my court. Okay. I don't know how we're gonna have one day this month. I don't know how we're gonna approach December, because if the Supreme Court does not extend any deadlines for civil and criminal cases, because that order currently expires on December 1st, then we'll go back to a weekly thing. Okay. If they do extend that, then we will, we'll take a look. We'll see how El Paso's performing, how we're adjusting to the COVID cases, the rate of infection, and things of that nature. So I think that kind of culminates what I have to say. If there's questions, I don't know if you do questions now or.
We do have questions for you.
Sure.
Those have been placed in the chat box, but I'll go ahead and read them to you just to make life a little bit simpler, Judge. Let me get here. Okay, so from John Hogan, he asked, if a tenant is on a month-to-month lease, we can serve a notice of non-renewal and get them out. If they refuse to leave, we evict based on holdover.
Yes.
That would.
Yes.
Okay. I have another. I have a tenant. This comes from Cynthia. I have a tenant has not lost job, doesn't want to apply for assistance, just doesn't want to pay. She says because with COVID, she wants to save money and says landlord should understand she is saving in case she gets COVID. I'm waiting for JP3 to open so I can file eviction. I have all these papers ready since last week. What options do I have?
So that question, the nature of that question asks for legal advice. I can't give legal advice. What I can say is that we are open. If you call the number, we do have folks in the office to answer phones. We can answer phone. If not, for some reason it goes to somebody's voicemail, I encourage you leave a voicemail. You can also email us at jp3office, OFFICE at epcounty.com and just title it eviction, and then we can tell you where you can file. You can file for your eviction. I guess what everybody should know is that you can always file for eviction. Okay. I can't tell you whether or not, I can't tell you how it's going to go in court, but you can always file.
Okay. Next question. It says, what are the options on month-to-month lease?
I'm not sure. I know what they're asking, but I can tell you, I have an idea of what they're asking, but it is, that sounds to be like kind of asking for legal advice, which I can't do. But I think the first question that somebody asked that we answered was probably under the same guise.
Okay. I have from Linda Bastra. I have 2 tenants that have received some help. I tried filing additional requests for other tenants and received notification they had no more funds available.
I don't know which who they're using for to get their funding from, but I know that Texas, I was told just recently, and because we get emails consistently, Texas Eviction Diversion Program does have funds available, and you can contact Project Bravo. And it's my understanding, I've talked to Project Bravo. I'm sorry, I'm looking for an email here, if I can get their email. We have spoken with Project Bravo, and she did let us know that I think for the amount of calls that they're getting and contact they're getting because of this program, they are slow to answer. They're just understaffed to answer. So I would encourage maybe an email, and let me see. I don't know. There's gonna be various emails. I don't know which one would be the correct one, but go to www.projectbravo.org, and I'm sure they can help explain through funds. Because I know they're looking for more enrollment for sure.
Okay. Next question we have: does the court ask the tenant for proof of contracting / diagnosed with COVID-19?
The court can.
Okay. Another question: how long is the average eviction process, and on average, what's the cost?
It should be within 21 days of the filing. Because of COVID, hopefully I addressed that issue. Because of COVID and the current emergency order, I think it's order 25 from the Supreme Court of Texas, we have some leeway in regards to that. To file an eviction case, I believe it's $140. I want to say it could be 144. And let me say this: it's 100. If there's multiple tenants, if you're going to get all other occupants, that's an additional $100, I believe, to that case.
Okay. Oh no, go ahead, Judge Herrera. I'm sorry.
Oh, one other thing that I was going to say, I was talking about the CDC moratorium on evictions and the declaration. If there's multiple occupants in a property, multiple occupants must provide that declaration to the landlord. Okay. Granted, if it's somebody under the age of 16, 15, I've had those where it was somebody's kids, I don't need a declaration from them. But if you have 2 people cohabiting, adults, then they would both need to do that.
Thank you, Judge Herrera. Since there are no more typed questions, I guess I offer the floor. If anybody wishes to ask a question, please unmute yourself one at a time and ask. Okay, Cynthia Camacho, go ahead.
If the tenant doesn't want to apply, doesn't want to sign the declaration, can I just go file anyway?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
If the tenant doesn't want to sign the declaration, can I just go file anyway?
Yes, so the tenant does not provide the declaration because, well, what the petition states at the bottom of it says, there's a checkbox that says, I have received, or I'm sorry, that's under the CARES Act verification form. You state, I have received or I have not received. So sometimes by the time that you file the eviction, you would not have received a declaration. But after the filing, when they're given the citation, you're given to it after. So we always ask folks after the fact.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Does anybody else have a question, comment, concern?
I have another one. If I go, I'm gonna go ahead and go later on today to file, but when I went on Monday, they told me it was by appointment only on the security. So I can just tell them I'm gonna go file today.
Was it at JP3?
Yeah, the one downtown.
Yeah, no. Did they give you, they should have, did they give you a slip of paper?
No, there was something about EP, email this or call them if they're closed.
Okay.
Let me in the,
No.
that's
What I would encourage you to do if you want to get in contact with the court, just to save you the trip from going down there, you can do all this by e-filing. Just email us at jp3office@epcounty.com and the subject line, like just maybe would like to file an eviction, and you can do it there. Additionally, if you go to the website, like you're going to need all those forms. Okay.
I already have them last week.
Okay. And then there's up at the top, above where all the forms are, there's a spot that says e-file. You can attempt to e-file there. If it seems too troublesome, we do accept via email.
Okay. Okay.
Judge, can I try to clarify a question or
Sure.
try to kind of touch base on it? And I noticed this, me and a couple other folks here, we have tenants that are on a month to month. So we serve them a 30-day notice that we want the property back. The owner's gonna sell it or move back, but they're refusing to move out, saying, you can't get us out. But they're on a month to month. So we serve them with a owner's intent to not renew the lease.
Mhm.
So does that say we don't have to give them all this COVID paperwork? You're on a month to month. We just want the house back in 30 days.
So then what, yeah, exactly. I mean, it seems like there's a couple different ways that could split up, but you could still file for the eviction. There's no lease in place. Okay. But that we've heard cases like that. I have heard cases like that.
Okay. So do you find your court awarding the property to the homeowner because the people are not in contract? We gave them a 30-day notice to get out, but they refused to get out. So now we're evicting based on holdover. Do you see the court awarding the houses?
I'd get into a very, I don't feel comfortable answering that question. I know you're asking me I know it's a direct question. I hate it when that's my only problem. When I love talking to you guys, but it gets me into that area. But there's no lease in place. We've heard those. I'll tell you on one that I heard, okay, because I'm not giving you advice. I heard one like that, and the property was given to the landlord. Okay, and that's the one that I can think of one right now. But
yeah, because it's not based on non-payment of rent. It's based on your lease is over. We're being kind and giving you a 30-day notice. We want the house back to sell, and we're sorry.
Yes.
And then they don't want to move.
Yes, but that's why, I mean, you got to look at I always tell folks to look at the lease, the contents of the lease, because sometimes it gives room for holdover. That's why it really depends. I see Ms. Salazar is asking a question, who to file an eviction with. contact, unfortunately, I don't think I don't think it's online where you can type in an address to figure out which JP the property falls in. Do you want to, if you can type in an address, or I'm sorry, if you can type in a zip code, I can give you an idea. And if I'm wrong, I would say just contact this JP. You are correct. Election board can always tell you.
I have a question and kind of a statement, you might say, but you know, we are all property managers and we have a responsibility to the landlord. At the same time, we have to be fair with our tenants. They have their equal rights too. But it seems like what's happening right now, and it's out of our hands, but it puts more stress on the landlord coming up with their mortgage payments, especially if, like most of us, we are handling properties that belong to a military person that has left El Paso, a retiree that's gone to someplace else with their children. It's only a one property landlord, not necessarily an investor, etc. So the point is that now the landlord that we deal with is also under stress trying to make that mortgage. And if all this paperwork that has been given to us that we have to fill out before we can evict that person out of that house, it seems to be like it's made more for the tenant than any regard to the landlord. So we need to have a much smoother, a more dictated type of transition, and that we can submit to you all, whether it's you or other JPs, to be able to remove these people from the houses one way or the other. Yes, we do understand and we do care about what's going on. And if these people are ill and they do qualify under these circumstances, you know, it's understandable. But we need to have a more structured, more defined way of submitting this paperwork to you, because some of us might not have known about these forms or these directives. So how can we, or how can you all help us in trying to get the property back, and so we can function in our responsibility to the landlord and take care of their properties and make sure that their assets are being taken care of?
So, first and foremost, Mr. Jurado, thank you for the question. I don't, it's not lost on me. I think on my court, or I think on other courts, how this is what's happening is detrimentally affecting both parties, the landlord and the tenant. I've had landlords in my court, you know, where he said, I had a savings and I got myself some properties and now I can't make a mortgage. That is not lost to me at all. The way that we streamline it as best as we possibly can is to make this widespreadly available is I just put this stuff on the website. That's the best thing that I can do. I don't know, there's so many different groups, so many different factions of landlord associations, of renters associations, of tenants, because equally so, though I should be able to get this information to you, then because the court is supposed to be impartial, that equally says we should get that to everybody who's a tenant as well. Okay. And because I haven't held this against landlords and I haven't held it against tenants either when they come into court and they're like, I didn't know about this form. So what we do is we try to be as proactive as we possibly can. I've had to update this site, our site, maybe 10 times since we went into the pandemic. I think that's a great point that you're making. Anytime and there's been so many different changes. El Paso counties that I think they're on our 14th emergency order right now. The Supreme Court, last time I checked, I think they're on order number 28. This is unprecedented for sure. And I don't know how to make it more widespreadly available other than what we're doing, because just like I'd have to tell you, so what I would say is check with the Texas Supreme Court, because that's when we find out about stuff, we put it here. I do get in contact. Mr. Jorge Arenas is very good about keeping in contact with me. Is there any changes? And I did meet, I think, with an executive committee or a different committee not long ago where I shared this information. And what I say is whenever I receive something, I put it on here. The JPs, we get together once a month. We talk and we see things of how we can run a little bit more functional. COVID is different, so we're addressing these issues all the time. And like I said, the JPs everybody's responsible for their own page. I am the presiding JP. So what I do is I put this information on the main JP website. So if there's any changes, you would see any changes there. I try to date the stuff so you see when that stuff's going to be there. Additionally, I put it on my own website just because I have control over that. And that's putting something on the internet. That's the best way I know how to do it right now. I know the county commissioners have and I think the city reps have to do a decent job of getting this information to the public. In the digital age, putting it out in the paper is something different than putting it online. It's more widely reached. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. I'm sympathetic to all parties. You know, I know you said, how can you help us get our property back? And when I took the bench, I always said that I was going to follow the law. That's what I based my campaign on, being a practitioner of law for 10 years. You know, what's more important to me is just following the law. So I'll continue to do that. Okay. I hear the frustration. You're absolutely right. And I wish I could, I wish I could put this in every renter's and every landlord's hand.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It seems to me, John, and everyone in the meeting, that quite frankly, it's going to be up to us to get familiar with the forms, know how it works, what forms we need, and then when we do need to use them, if there's any question, we can always call the JP that we need to speak to. But our first step is to download those forms, go through them, and if we have a questions, perhaps calling Judge Herrera's office or our local JP and have them explain, the wordage or perhaps what box that we need to check. So quite frankly, I think it's going to be up to us also to get familiar with the forms and so we can have a straight and speedy process.
I think there's forms on that note that the landlords absolutely need to be aware of is the petition for eviction. Okay. You need to be aware of the verification of compliance. Those are two different forms that are on our website. And the third one is the contest of declaration. If somebody gives you a declaration and you want to contest it, there's three. So the rule of three always helps out. So
I already went to your website, downloaded them.
there you go. So those three, those are forms. Those are the ones. And the other stuff that is on there is just more informational. Supreme Court of Texas, order, moratorium, tenant declaration.
Thank you. Okay, Anthony Hart, go ahead. Uh-oh. Anthony, did we lose you?
Yeah, can you speak? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead, sir.
Right. There you go. I just wanted to take a moment and thank you for taking the time to walk through this with us a little bit. I guess one item my organization, we're just kind of getting into some of this. We're seeing a little bit of our tenants, but most of the time, our owners have been somewhat flexible in regards to working with tenants and trying to get, payments done and working through that. It does seem, if I'm not maybe overreaching, but it does seem that despite maybe tenants not knowing that there is that declaration or any of that, that you, in the eviction process at some point, it would be in favor for the tenant or for us to work through the tenant, give them all, all options and all possibilities out there prior to that, because it does seem that even if we do get to the eviction process, the court is geared towards making sure that all those exhausted resources have been done, make sure that the tenant's fully informed even at that point, in regards to like the CDC verification that you had mentioned and all of that. And so it's more of just a comment, that we're kind of working in the right direction of kind of not only letting our owners know, hey, these are the two sides of it, right? You can, put them, give them the eviction notice or not work with them if you're in the month-to-month, for example, or work with them, because I guess even with the month-to-month situation, you're probably going to, in some cases, go to an eviction case because they probably don't have the funds to go anywhere. So you're eventually going to get to that eviction point anyways. And I would think this all would come into question anyways during that point, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great point. To be proactive, you can hand out the CD tenant declaration, because I can tell you because you're talking about whether or not, this is whether or not it gets to court. If it gets to court, they will receive it in their citation packet. Sometimes they receive the citation packet and they do not notice that form in that. That's just happened in the court. But that's one thing to do. And, the rent help, the rental assistance, government rental assistance, those options are available. I don't know that they're for anybody. I don't know if they're going to suit landlords. I don't know if they're going to suit property owners or property managers, but sorry, my other ones are talking. But it's something to look into. That stuff is definitely something to look into. Because realistically, I'm not sure that when we were in March, we knew that we were going to be where we are right now. So, and maybe some folks didn't want to consider those resources before, but maybe they're worth looking into.
All right.
And I hope we can continue. Thank you for the question. And I hope if these resources are working, I hope they get funded more.
Does anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns for Judge Herrera?
No,
Go ahead.
no, I was just saying if no one else has any questions, then I guess we can go ahead and wrap this up. So Judge Herrera, thank you very much on behalf of the Leasing and Property Management Committee from the El Paso Association of Realtors. We always appreciate your help, your insight and guidance with all these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. This stuff, I know it's frustrating because the stuff gets updated, and just as you are frustrated, it can be frustrating for us as well.
Yes.
But where we are right now, who knows if offices are open or not? Email your JPs, try calling them, email. In my office, there's a staff of 8 ready to help out. Monica she operates the Millennium Falcon in my office. So if you can't remember any name, just remember that name and we'll get you the right answer.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay,
Thank you. And hopefully you can help us out sometime early next year with any changes and some guidance.
Yes, I will keep you guys in mind because I do imagine the Supreme Court order that expires December 1st. I got to imagine something's going to be renewed or something's going to be extended. So I will share that information with you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Stay safe. Be well. Thank you.
You too. Thank you. Bye.